Today, the San Diego Union-Tribune Editorial Board is joined by Paul McQuigg, who is a candidate for District 4, the county supervisor's race, the special election. Paul, thanks for taking the time to be with us today.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure to be here.
Great. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself? The three candidates you're running against are well known. We've met with them before in other editorial board conversations, but this is the first time we've had a chance to talk to you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, where you live, what you do for work, what calls you to public service?
I was originally born in Ohio, grew up outside Chicago. I joined the Marines in 1997. I'm a retired Marine, so I medically retired in 2013, and then I was permanently retired in 2017. I was severely wounded in combat in 2006. I took a bomb blast to the face. After extensive surgeries, recovery over a number of years, I requested to go back to duty. I helped found the Wounded Warrior Battalion West at Camp Pendleton, which Congress designated as the model for all the other services to base their Wounded Warrior units around. So I worked there for about 6 years. Then I did a little time in public affairs for Marine Corps Installations West. I was the community engagement chief for Marine Corps Installations West, so that covers most of Southern California, Arizona, all the way out to Yuma. After I retired from the Marine Corps, I was a police and fire commissioner for the city of Oceanside. So I served there for 4.5 years before moving to San Diego. I live in Webster. I work with a number of nonprofits, Simplify America's Fund, Folds of Honor, the Ways Project. I work with disabled veterans, primarily with those nonprofits. I represent the families of veterans and first responders who were either severely injured in the service or killed while in the service or in the line of duty for first responders, so firemen and police officers. So I represent them nationwide through Folds of Honor. I've always had been drawn to assisting others. From my time in the Marine Corps, humanitarian assistance operations in Turkey, the Middle East, the Balkans, the Caucasus, North Africa. As I said, I served as a police and fire commissioner for 4.5 years. I only resigned because I moved to San Diego, so I couldn't fill the position any longer. I coached a lot of kids in youth sports over the last 15 years. I'm a single father. My son is 19. He goes to the University of Nevada at Las Vegas. He's on the Dunes list, and he lives a pretty good life out there. And I feel that the issues that we have here in San Diego, they affect a lot of the country. But also the ideas that we have are, I think, closed-minded. We're not using enough of our resources to branch out, find the best practices to combat those issues. And I feel with my global experience that I can bring things to the table and bring ideas. I know that I can bring ideas to the table that have worked in other places and haven't been tried here in San Diego, haven't been expanded enough in San Diego because we're thinking, oh, we're California and we have the best ideas. Well, that's not always the case.
I appreciate that answer. I appreciate your service. as well to the country, and then since your injury. Let me ask you, why this race? Since this is your first foray into politics, I'm always curious, talking to a first-time candidate, why they chose the particular office that they're running for. Why this one and not a school board race, a city council race, any other political seat you could have chosen? What is it about the County Board of Supervisors that appeals to you and makes you think you're a good fit for it?
For a couple of reasons. Well, I've lived in San Diego County since 2001. My mother lives in Oceanside. My father lives in San Marcos. So both my parents had moved out here. And they plan on staying here. My mom retired here. And my dad was already retired when he did move here. My son, I assume, will eventually come back to San Diego County. As we saw during the pandemic, the county supervisors have a lot of authority, a lot of control. I have a vested interest in the county. My parents live in the county. I have a lot of friends in the county. I think the county is could be a shining jewel. It also has one of the largest veterans populations in the nation. This county does. So with me being a veteran, I'm not doing this just for myself, but I'm doing this for them and those everyone that comes after me. If we can improve the quality of life here for not just the veterans, but families, kids, so on and so forth, the best place to begin change is from the inside. And why not start at the top and help everyone and be a servant to everyone that is that's in the county. And I just love, this area that I live in. Also, I live in Webster. It's not the most prominent neighborhood, but I chose to live here. I love my house. I love my community. I spent a lot of time in the Mesa, especially during the pandemic. A lot of restaurants out there stayed open, so I frequented those. Hillcrest, for a short time, I lived in North Park, so I was in North Park a lot because my son went to Western High School. So I spent a lot of time in Hillcrest as well. I've gotten to know a lot of the people. And in my current position with the federal government, I help calculate the consumer price index. So I gather financial data from families throughout San Diego County. And so I meet with on average, about 30 families a month. And the trend with all these families is that the cost of living in San Diego is gotten way too high. And I feel for these people, and they ask me, what can the government do to help? What can the government do to help? They see a government representative in front of them, and they think that I can solve the problems. Obviously, I can't, but at a leadership position in the county, I can help mitigate some of those issues and help be a buffer and help look out for the people that have these problems. People are concerned about homelessness. They're talking about homelessness. They're talking about the high crime. So I hear this stuff on a daily basis from the people that I deal with. And people are really hurting in the county. And we really need to do a lot more than what we're doing to help these people and help them enjoy life and get back to living so they're not living in fear from a number of different avenues.
Thank you. And we'll get into a lot of those issues, only starting with homelessness and others. But I want to ask you first kind of a philosophical question and then maybe a specific question related to it. But philosophically, I'm curious what your approach would be at a pretty polarizing time when people's visions of what they want and what the county wants and what the county needs can be so different, right? Only starting with climate change, transit, homelessness is another example. Sometimes people see those issues a lot differently and solutions can vary widely. So how would you balance, hearing from a wide range of folks, and what would your approach be in juggling and approaching that?
I think the first step for any leader is to listen. In my leadership positions, the most important thing is when you first come into a new position is to sit back, see how things are run, listen to people, observe, and then you find out what works and what doesn't work, and then you try to implement plans, right? By coming into a position and immediately starting to change things before you really understand how things operate, you're just creating a bigger problem for yourself and for those around you. So the most important thing I feel is to listen, and I can listen. I can learn from anyone. That's one of the things in my career that you can learn from the general or you can learn from the private. Just because you have a position of authority doesn't mean that you know the best way to do something. That just because you become a position of authority doesn't give you automatic wisdom to know how to solve those problems. So you want to take the best practices out there and formulate a cohesive plan by listening to people, and then you move forward and you shed off all those issues or all those problems that are slowing you down. We have a thing in it's familiar with Lean Six Sigma. It's a process of constant product improvement, right? And this is something that in the military we teach, and I've been blessed to be able to go through the course. So you look at a process, and people pay a lot of money to go to these courses in the civilian world, right? You look at a process, take a step back with your process and see where the process is failing. And what you need to do is you need to eliminate or minimize those areas where you're having a higher propensity to fail, or it's slowing the process down. And by limiting or mitigating those steps in the process, you eventually increase your productivity. So that's the approach I would take to it, is sit back, realize what I've learned with Lean Six Sigma, and also listening to the best practices and getting rid of those worst practices and then moving forward.
One of those issues where people see different solutions is climate change. And I noticed in your Q&A to us, thanks for sending that back to us, by the way, you said that the county and the state and the country maybe are moving way too fast on addressing emissions.
Yes.
First, let me ask you a couple quick questions on that. Do you believe that humans are causing climate change? And when you say moving too fast, what specific areas do you think should be slowed down, and how?
So our climate has been changing since the beginning of time. The more people you put into anything, the more it's going to change, right? So so the climate's always been changing, right? And there's more people on the planet. So as you have more people, you're going to have more sins, right? So it's kind of a math equation. There's no way to really. So yes, so that's my answer to that. I think right now, there's been a huge push for electric vehicles. Now I remember last summer, everyone was encouraged to buy electric vehicles, and then the state came out and said, don't charge the vehicles because we don't have enough power in the grid in order for you to charge all your vehicles. In order to support an infrastructure, you have to have the resources there to support it. And that's with anything. So if we don't have enough power to power all these electric vehicles, then we need to either build up the power, or we need to slow down the process of putting all these elements on the road that rely on that power until we have reached that threshold. I think hybrids, for the time being, until we have that infrastructure built, are the best option. It's a middle point. It uses some of each, right? What we're trying to go away from and what we're trying to go towards. And then as we transition to a point where we have enough power to power all these electric vehicles, then people can start switching over to electric. Another issue with electric vehicles is you have different types of charging systems, right? There's no universal plug, okay? My mom has a hybrid. However, she can't charge her car everywhere she goes because she has a Chevy, right? So until we have a universal power system where we can charge all those cars. We can't drive across the entire country on an electric vehicle because we may not be able to charge it. So hybrids also will help alleviate that problem as well.
Thank you for that answer.
So,
I wanted to ask you a couple questions about homelessness. It seems like one of the growing problems with our response to homelessness is that there's a lack of regional collaboration. Cities have different ideas about what to do, and homeless people are kind of, just kind of moving around accordingly. So I wonder what you will do to foster more regional collaboration between local governments, particularly on homelessness.
number one, the county needs to take a leadership role in the homelessness and not leave it to the cities to decide. Because each city, like you said, has a different idea of how to combat it. But it's a county-wide issue, it's a statewide issue. So the county needs to take a leadership role and bring all the resources together in one spot. Veterans Village does a stand down every summer over a weekend where they bring all the veterans in to San Diego High. They connect them with services. All the resources are in one place. Homelessness is a multifaceted issue. So you have to approach it with a multidisciplinary team in order to solve those issues. Veterans Village brings in dental, they bring in doctors, they bring in barbers, they bring in food, they bring it all to one place and they help bring the veterans there. What we need to do as a county is mirror that process. We have plenty of county land. We bring the homeless in over a month-long period if need be, and you start putting them in the services. Treatment for those that are drug addicted, mental health treatment as well. You bring all the services together. You have great organizations in Oceanside. You have great organizations in Escondido. You have great organizations in San Diego. However, the homeless can't get to all these places because a lot of them don't have transportation. We have a county transportation system that isn't the best in the world. And individuals shouldn't have to wake up at 4:30 a.m. to get to a 7:30 shift by riding the bus. So until we build out more infrastructure with our public transportation system, we can provide the transportation for those homeless to get to where they need to be so we can offer them the services. The problem with homelessness and recovery is you need to meet that person where they are, not where you want them to be in 6 months or where you imagine them to be right now. They're not at that point. They're not ready to be at that point. So you need to meet them where they are. It's the same thing with mental health counseling. You meet them where they are, and then you work with them step by step to get them to the point that you want them to be at so they can get back into society. Too many times, we are wanting them to be where we want them to be. And that is just setting them up for failure because they're not equipped to be at that level and operate successfully at that level. And then they're failing and they're falling back into it.
Okay, well, thank you for answering that. And on that same topic, the homelessness crisis is also the mental health crisis, is the drug addiction crisis. Do you support a housing first approach, or do you think that mental health services or rehab services should be mandatory in order to get certain kinds of assistance?
So about 3 weeks ago in El Cajon, there was a single mother, and she was given a hotel room with her kids. And she OD'd in that hotel room with her kids. She was a drug addict. That was the housing first approach. If with anything, it should be treatment first, and with treatment comes housing. If we could build a 500-bed hospital on county land and staff it with drug addiction counselors, mental health specialists, we could provide that one campus for the homeless to come. Just like Veterans Village is built, just like the Wounded Warrior Battalion at Camp Pelham is built. There's barracks there. all the providers are there on site, so the wounded, ill, and injured don't have to go all over the base to find their services. At Veterans Village, all the campuses, all the services are on site. You need to provide a one-stop location for these services, because the homeless can't always get there. So if they can get to one spot and get all their needs met, then you've already won half the battle, because transportation is a huge issue. So with treatment for mental health as well as with drug addiction, if in a residential facility, housing comes along with it. They're already there, but they're also getting the help that they need at the same time. You can't just leave a drug addict in a room by themselves when they still have the opportunity to procure drugs. You can't leave someone with a severe mental health issue in a room by themselves if they're not going to be taking their medication, because then they're going to trash the hotel room, or they're going to trash the apartment. So with the housing needs to come treatment at the same time.
Okay, and I want to shift really quickly to a question about the trans community. This is a community that's facing increasing threats, both in San Diego County and across the nation. And I wonder, how exactly would you support this role, or support this group in your role? And is there anything that the county should be doing to support transgender people that it isn't currently doing?
So that's a interesting question. We were actually asked that question at the League of Women Voters Forum on Saturday. So I feel that you have bad actors in any community, right? So you have people that are doing the wrong thing in the Black community. You have people that are doing the wrong thing in the white community. You have people that are doing the wrong thing in the trans community. You need to view people as individuals. When those things happen, you need to hold those people that are doing the wrong thing accountable, right? And not punish the other 90% for what the 10% do. And that's with anyone across the board, right? So when we look at people, we just look at the person as it is. If they've done something wrong, then they have to be held accountable, whoever that may be, through civil, legal, whatever. And then, but you can't punish everyone for the actions of one person.
I guess the question was more about how you will support the trans community who's victims to those kinds of, targeted hate. So, I mean, like, people who have done nothing wrong are simply being targeted for their identity. Like, what do you think the county could be doing to support them?
Right, that's why I said you can't treat an entire population as for one person's actions. So you treat each person individually equally, right? So that's what I'm saying is, you judge a person by their behavior, not by who they are. So if a person's doing something incorrectly, then that's when you correct it. If they're not doing it, you just leave them alone and go about their business. So we're looking at everybody equally is what I'm saying, right? And you can't treat an entire community like you would just treat one person who's done something that is unethical or immoral.
Thank you.
Hi, Paul. I turned off my camera because my internet is acting weird this morning. But I wanted to ask you about public transportation, and you already talked a little bit about it in one of Bella's questions. But I want to know your thoughts on that. When was the last time that you used public transportation here in San Diego, and what are you driving currently?
So I drive a Honda CR-V. It's a 2021. The last time I used public transportation was probably to go to a Padres game when I lived in Oceanside. However, my son rode the bus when he was in high school, which was 2 years ago, when I was unable to take him somewhere. And what he related to me about his time on the bus was he had to take about 5 or 6 different buses or something like that over the course of about 3 hours or something to get from our house up to the high school where he needed to go for football practice or football conditioning. And like I said before, a person shouldn't have to get up at 4:30 a.m. to get to a 7:30 shift if they're relying on public transportation. I don't feel that public transportation here is as robust as it could be. I don't feel that it gets through to enough locations. And I think that there are a lot of dense population groups that don't have public transportation nearby where they live. So I don't feel that a public transportation meets the needs of the county, and I'd like to see some improvements. I would have to look more comprehensively at it, but from my personal experience with my son and speaking with other members of the community, and also actually seeing the public transportation in action, it will not mean a public transportation needs. If we want to encourage people to not rely on their vehicles or their cars, then we need to provide them with a viable alternative that makes sense to them, and it doesn't add 3 or 4 hours to their commute, where they can still commute in about the same amount of time and still get to work and not have to worry about being late.
Would you suggest, would you suggest then like a larger network in the routes, to expand the routes?
Route expansion would be good. More direct routes. We can take ideas from other states. We can build some bridges so that the trolley doesn't have to stop so many times, or the train doesn't have to stop so many times for red lights. There's best practices all over the world. Sacramento got the idea for the bullet train from Japan. So we're able to take ideas from other places that work really well. We just have to implement them in the right places and the right locations to make a positive impact on the, not just the environment, but on the livelihood of our residents.
Okay, thank you. On other topic, I want to ask you, what message would you send to people that either live or work in District 4, but they are not able to vote in this election, either because of their situation, undocumented immigrants, or refugees?
So my message is, I'm running this election. It's District 4 for all of us. So whether they vote or not, or unable to vote, and historically, midterm elections and special elections have a very low voter turnout. So we're probably gonna have a lot of people that can vote that aren't going to vote, even though it's been made easier by mail-in ballots. I mean, the ballots delivered back to the house. Some people just throw it away, unfortunately. I have some friends that can't vote. Actually, one of them, he's from the Netherlands, and we talked yesterday. He says, I can't vote, but you have my support. And so, this election affects everyone. So even if they can't vote or they're unable to vote, please become knowledgeable about the candidates, and talk to your friends who can vote and encourage them to also become knowledgeable. And if you have someone that you think would be the best representative for you and your community, encourage your friends to vote for them as well.
Okay, thank you. And one last question from me would be about the border. I know that District 4 is not necessarily on the border, but our county is. So I would like to know, when was the last time that you were there, the border area, or that you crossed to Mexico? And what are your plans to address those border issues that affect all the county?
I spent a lot of time in Mexico. I went to Mexico quite a bit. Now, after 9/11, though, Mexico was off limits to military personnel. So I was not able to go to Mexico for about 15 years. So not until I retired was I allowed to go back down to Mexico. My main concern with the border right now is the sewage problem that we have in Imperial Beach and Coronado, because that's affecting the county. It affects tourism. It affects the disadvantaged youth, because their summer camps have to be canceled or moved to a location that they aren't able to get to. This problem's been going on for far too long. I'm happy that the Board of Supervisors has declared an emergency, so that would get some federal funding. I would like to see the Army Corps of Engineers be sent down to Mexico to rebuild the entire system down there, to not only give the people of Mexico a better quality of life, but to just scrap this old antiquated system that's obviously not working, that we're spending money, $300 million on just fixing problems that have been persisting. So they're just slapping band-aids on an old system. The Army Corps of Engineers has the technology to build a brand new system, which will improve the quality of life of the people in Mexico, as well as stop the sewage from coming over the border. Why that hasn't happened yet is beyond me. But it's something that I think that the supervisors need to push for, and that as a supervisor, that's why we'll push for, because we have the resources here in this country and the technology to make a better quality of life for everyone involved, and we're not doing it.
Thank you.
Paul, I have a couple questions for you. Going back to transportation and climate, we are all being encouraged to move towards electric vehicles, which a lot of people cannot afford. But what do you see as your philosophy, if you will, in terms of putting in infrastructure? Where and how should the county be dealing with that, both on the affordability level and the infrastructure, to be able to encourage people to do that?
So if you have things that are out of reach for people to buy and the government wants you to buy them, there need to be incentives, cost protection measures, things like that. If the average person can't afford an electric vehicle, they also shouldn't be penalized for not being able to afford an electric vehicle either. More incentives, more tax breaks. I would like to see more solar farms. They provide a lot more electricity than what we're seeing right now. They also provide a source of revenue. But along with solar farms is you have to have a means to clean the solar panels, right? So I also like to see more desalination plants. The U.S. Navy uses desalination on all of our vessels. That's how we get fresh water. That's how we sour it. The plant in Carlsbad is underutilized, and I would like to see more of them. If people say the ocean levels are rising, then we have more salt water, right? So if we have more salt water, we can turn it into fresh water, and we can clean those solar panels, because we all know that solar panels need to be cleaned in order to operate at max efficiency. So if we can bring in more fresh water, it will also help with the drought, but we can clean the solar panels at these solar farms that will be providing the electricity for the people that we need in order to eliminate or not rely so much on the fossil fuels. And we also need to do a lot of upgrades to older buildings. Germany is very good at upgrading technology with older buildings. I spent some time in Munich a couple of years ago, and what they do is they bring in the new technology, they merge it with the old technology, and they are making things a lot more efficient by removing antiquated systems and installing newer systems, but they still keep this beautiful infrastructure there. When you go and you look at the city and you view it, it doesn't look like 100% modern city with no with no flavor to the city. It's a great process, and I think that we should look at preserving older buildings, but by moving newer systems into them that don't use as much energy.
Okay, and my second question I have for you is, you're going to be, if you were to be elected, you're going to be voting on issues outside of District 4 that are very important to the county, excluding the homeless issue we've spoken about already, and the border sewage, excluding those two subjects. What other issues do you think are super important in the North County, in the beach communities, in the East County, South County? What other issues do you think need more attention than they're getting?
Definitely crime. There's a spike in crime. We don't have enough police officers in San Diego. We don't have enough county sheriffs in the county. We need to, and on top of that is also childcare is another issue. I think there's 190,000 children across the county under the age of 12 that lack childcare. It's become too expensive for a lot of families, working families. We also have at-risk youth that are not given enough diversionary options. We have the Police Athletic League, which works. They have an Escondido as well as Chula Vista. We also have the ABC Youth Foundation here in San Diego, which uses boxing as a vehicle to show youth that there is a better alternative to drugs and gangs. And if you can limit the amount of youth that are exposed to gangs, crime, and bad elements, you can lower populations of the jails, right? And so right now the jails are overflowing. They become the de facto mental health and drug addiction dumping point for a lot of the people in San Diego. So they're overwhelmed. If we can slow down that process of young people going through the system of jail, then we can limit the jail population. We can also focus on the mental health and bring those people out of jail and into the mental health facilities where they can get the treatment that they need.
Paul, I'm going to try to jump in here with a question if my internet connection allows me to.
Right.
The board recently voted to allow staff to review community reinvestment funds as opposed to having open meetings with the public. I wonder if this is something we came down against it. We don't think it's very transparent. I'm wondering if you agree, and if what are your feelings on transparency of government actions?
I would have voted no on that initiative. No government operates without the taxes of the people, right? So the people pay the taxes, and that's what government uses to provide funds for everything, right? So the people the people have a right to know where the funds are being sent, where they're going. So you need to have public comments. You need to publicize who's applying for these grants, where the money's going, and you need to read open to people. I fully believe that if the people don't see a return on their investment, because that's what taxes are supposed to be, an investment in the government, then the people have the right to say, no, we don't want this to happen with our money. So to reemphasize, I would have voted no, and that is need to stay in the public eye. And because when it comes to the end of the day, that's public money, and it was provided by the people for the people, and we have a right to know where that money is going. Everyone has a right to know where that money is going before it gets there.
Speaking of public money, the supervisors used to be considered very fiscally conservative, defending the reserves and their credit rating, spending much less on social services than they do now. The latest board now spends a lot more money on social services. I'm wondering, where do you come down? Are you more fiscally conservative or not?
You know, I like to do things like case by case basis, depending on where the money's going, what the return is, what historically those types of programs have done, and how they've been utilized and instituted. I feel that the current reserves of the board are too high. I believe that we have more than enough in our county reserves with the $8.1 billion budget, that we can invest more of the money that we have in reserves into more programs that will help the people. And also, there's a recession coming. It will also help to cushion the effect of the recession on the population when it does hit, if we are able to tap those reserves, where I think the reserves are much too high at this point.
Okay, I'd like to ask a question now about the county jails. More than 230 deaths since 2006, a scathing state audit, Union-Tribune investigation for 6 months showing all these deficiencies. And yet the County Board of Supervisors has been reluctant to try to pressure the sheriff, old and new, to make changes. In Los Angeles County, when there were problems with the sheriff, the county supervisors did not hesitate to speak out and try to force change. What would you envision your role if you were a county supervisor in responding to a sheriff's department that has had this jail death problem forever, and in the minds of a lot of families and activists still doesn't take it seriously?
Like I said before, we need to limit the jail population. We also need to stop using the jails as a dumping ground for our mental health patients that should be elsewhere. We also need to provide, more resources in the jail. We have a deficiency when it comes to mental health providers here in the county. We need to incentivize bringing more mental health providers in. And, so the sheriff is an elected official, so I don't believe that the supervisors can fire her. But it comes down to the people on the ground that are also working with them. And we have a lot of sheriffs that are doing overtime in the jails, they're overworked. When people get overworked, they get sloppy, and you have mistakes happen. You have a lot of issues. We also have a deficiency in probation officers who also run the juvenile facility, and they also maintain, their regular jobs. So we need to limit the jail population and then increase the number of mental health professionals that are available to help out with the population that we do have in the jail. And we need to divert the mental health patients not to the jail, but to a program where they can get the help that they need.
One more question for me. In your candidate questionnaire, you made some thoughtful points at the very end about the problems with the public education system. But honestly, the county supervisors may have no issue where they're more walled off. The state makes decisions on funding and on broad policies. Local school districts make decisions on individual districts. So how do you anticipate, or do you anticipate, being able to have any influence on education if you're elected?
Yes, a lot of policies that when it comes to education are not set by the county board of supervisors, but the county board of supervisors have a lot of negotiating power. So there's things that you can do that you can try to increase the level of proficiency for math and reading and things like that. You actually need to sit down with these board members and let them know that, hey, we're failing our kids. And the kids, our children are our nation's most precious resources. Without them, we leave the earth to nothing. And by not providing the resources that they need in school, we're failing them, we're failing our own planet, we're failing in the future. So the board of supervisors need to use their negotiating power to help and turn this around so they can bring the education in California back up to where it needs to be, so we're not the second most illiterate state in the country.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up question on reserves? You said the reserve level was far too high. How much of the reserves would you want to tap, and what would you prioritize spending that money on?
So I think last estimate, the reserves were at 3 times the recommended number. I think we could probably cut that in half. And we would have to spread that money out, of course, not all into one. But number one, that 500-bed hospital to be fully staffed with enough personnel to treat the mental health of the homeless as well as the existing problems of the homeless. Offer incentives to bring mental health providers either into the state or help to encourage young people to go into that profession by offering them maybe bonuses, so on and so forth. So I would like to see a lot of that money be utilized for the homeless. If you can clean up the streets, to a point where people can enjoy themselves again, tourism come back. I mean, I've walked down Imperial Avenue, I've driven by Imperial Avenue, and it looks worse than some war zones that I've been in. So people want to take pride in San Diego. And in order to solve problems, we need to be smart with our money and not just throw money at a problem without a comprehensive plan. So, like I said, the 500-bed hospital would be the beginning, would be a starting point. But while that's being built, you have the funding to do a homeless stand down. And with the amount of money that's in the reserves, a good chunk of that will be paid for, and you bring the nonprofits in and you start that process of cleaning up the streets and helping the homeless so they're not dying on the streets. They have a compassionate place to live, and they're not stuck in some parking lot where the temperature gets to be 190 degrees on the asphalt with no water and no showers.
The flip side of homelessness is housing. Everyone seems to agree the county needs more housing. The disagreement happens in how much, where, what types. I'm curious what your approach to housing would be, and do you have specific locations in mind for where in your district new housing could go?
There are a couple locations in the district. Some of them have already been earmarked for other projects, and some of them were earmarked for projects, but I don't know the status of them. One thing for seniors definitely would be mobile homes. They cost a fraction of what a full-size home to build, and they're built in a factory, and then they're transported to the place where they're utilized. We have a lot of seniors. I think right now the highest population of new homeless on the street are 55 and older. These are grandma and grandpa on a fixed income. They've lived in San Diego their entire lives. They budgeted to stay here, and all of a sudden they're out on the street and they're homeless for the first time. When I was a police and fire commissioner in the city of Oceanside, the homeless outreach team reported that if you can make contact with a homeless person within 90 days, 9 times out of 10, you can get them back into housing because they haven't gone down that spiral where things have gotten so much worse. We would, so these are alternative means to building large developments. I've met some elderly couples that live in some of these mobile homes, and they're very happy. And the price that they pay is minimum compared to what a normal mortgage would cost. And they're living their best life in these mobile homes. East County has a lot of land, but I don't want to put all the land in East County, all the homes in East County. Because then you have the problem once again with transportation not being able to, public transportation not being able to reach all of them. But yeah, so, and then when it comes to high density housing, so growing up outside Chicago, we had the Robert Taylor homes, and we also had Cabrini Green. And those of us that know our history know that those were a disaster. And the reason they were such a disaster is because they allowed everyone into them. If you're low income, no matter what you did, you could live there. And so that brought in the gangs and the drug dealers, and it just turned into a ghetto. You have to have stipulations. If you're going to provide low income housing in a dense area, you can't be selling drugs, you can't be a gang member doing the wrong thing and then be rewarded for it. So it needs to be a tough love kind of thing. If they can stop with the drugs and get a real job, get them out of the gang, not committing crimes, then yeah, the door's open for you. We'll bring you in and we'll provide it for you. But you can't just open it up to everybody, because if you bring everyone in, then you're going to have another disaster. And I mean, those projects have been razed to the ground. And no one really wants to talk about them anymore because they were such a complete failure.
And another area I just wanted to follow up on is the jails, the jail situation. I'm wondering, who would you search entering jails? Part of the jail deaths issue is caused by drugs coming into the jails, and they've been unable to prevent that. Who would you search? Would you draw the line at staff, or would you incorporate staff searches into your philosophy?
So I think everyone needs to be searched, right? If you're going into a secure area, so I work for the federal government. I've been to a lot of secure areas. There's places we go where you can't bring your cell phone, right? So the cell phone goes into a locked box, and when you come out, you open it back up. Yeah, just because someone's in law enforcement or a sheriff or a staff member in a jail doesn't mean they're doing the right thing. So I think that everyone needs to be searched. You go in, you go out. It's supposed to be a place where either people are getting rehabilitated or getting cared for, or they're trying to turn their lives around. That's what jails. I mean, so yeah, I would search everyone. That's just I mean, I think that's more of a common sense thing. I know that it hasn't happened, but yeah, everyone should do this. That's just when we go on an airplane, we we fly, you get sick, you give up everything. The same thing when you enter a government building, things like that. So yeah, even though you're an employee doesn't mean you're doing the right thing.
Appreciate that answer. And one last question from me. I know you said the sheriff is independently elected and controls the jails, although the supervisors control her budget. I'm just curious, how would you assess Kelly Martinez in her role so far? What do you think of the job that she's done to date?
So I've been there for a short time. I haven't really seen any changes, any major changes. I think that more incentives should be given towards recruiting. They're currently at a deficit when it comes to officers, and I would like to see her get more active and ask for more funds to. So I would like to see like the home buying program also for deputy sheriffs. The jails are obviously an ongoing issue and something that she inherited, but she's been a part of the system for quite some time. So I would have expected, if it was an ongoing issue, to have some ideas about how to implement change when you have an issue that comes up like that, or that's been ongoing, because everyone has their own ideas on things. So I think that possibly she needs a little bit more time to get a full assessment on her. Things are still evolving, and I don't think she's been efficient for longer than a year yet. So she's still kind of the new kid, even though she's been part of the system. But like I said, when I take a leadership position, I sit back and I take stock of what's going on. And I think that she's should be near the end of taking the stock of what's going on and getting ready to implement. This is the time that she's got to implement some effective changes.
I appreciate that thoughtful answer in your time today. Let me ask if the board members have any other issues that they want to address. Yeah, so we covered a lot of ground. Paul, I appreciate your time. Do you have anything you want to add? Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to point out to us?
I know I'm the only non-San Diegan in this election, and that may, for some people, turn them off. However, I'm the only one with global experience in bringing solutions to change. And foreign countries around the world, as well as representing a lot of our veterans. I come from a very diverse background. My mom is Black and Native American. My dad is white. They got married in 1970, and that was 2 years after the Supreme Court had said it was unconstitutional to outlaw interracial marriage. I feel that with the amount of people I've dealt with, worked with in my lifetime, all over the world, from organizations, from Sunni Muslims and Shiite Muslims, to help them come together to build a better country. I know that I have the most experience with bringing together people from both sides of the aisle in order to bring things around to the greater good for all.
Thanks for adding that. I appreciate you putting yourself out there as a candidate and spending some time with us today. Thanks so much, Paul.
Of course, my pleasure. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.